I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
I will just bring some order. I think let's go to the ZNDC board chairperson first, Mr. Masimuremba, to respond to these issues. You are the board chairperson before Mr. Mringani, so it's only proper that you respond to these issues. Thank you.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Chairman, Mr. Masimuremba, you're the former ZNDC chairperson, and I'm sure you would also be part of the issues which are support is critical. ZNDC is the vehicle that mines on behalf of government in terms of the joint venture partners every time that you're in office, and in terms of regularization too, in terms of licensing and all that. And I think what must be clear is that you've got ZNDC, which is a government arm, but equally from a regularization point of view, seems to be mining illegal. Because it's just not the joint venture partners. They are in the ZNDC, which is an arm of government. So, was government mining illegal?
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Chair. Now, government is the owner of the concessions. It could not have been mining illegally. But of course, when you look at the joint venture agreement, what you're saying is you have created an entity between the government holding 50% and then the private player, the investor who has come in. I think it's a moot point. Who had the obligation to renew the licenses? And I think an argument has been raised by the investors that it was the responsibility of government to ensure that licenses were always up to date, rather than the responsibility of the investor. I'm not saying which is correct, but I think it is a moot and debatable point that the investor came in primarily to bring in capital. And the government's responsibility was to ensure that that investor continued to mine in terms of the laws of the country. But there could be a different view, that it was the responsibility of the entity which has been created to ensure that it continued to mine in accordance with the laws of the country. But what we are saying, Honorable Chair, is that the government was very much a part of this joint venture, and so it is a moot point. But I don't think that mining was being carried out illegally. That cannot, in my view, be correct.
During your tenure as chairman, can you confirm to the companies that you were working with in terms of the diamonds? Can you add, and out of the companies that had been mentioned, which ones were productive and which ones were not? If those were not productive, what did you do as a board?
The ones which were productive was Anjin, Mbada Diamonds, DMC, Marange Resources, although it was struggling, but it was a little bit better. But the top were those three. Kusena was still in its formative stages. Rera the same. Jinyame was having problems. And what did we do? in respect of Canada, let's start with Canada. When we're saying Marange, there is a confusion with Marange and Canada. The operating company was Canada. Canada being a joint venture between Marange Resources, which was wholly owned by ZMDC, and Coal Mining. Now, Coal Mining was supposed to be a special purpose vehicle of BSGR, an investor who was supposed to have brought in $2 billion and to invest in Marange. But that investor never came. What we actually ended up with was Coal Mining on its own with a ragtag team of people from South Africa of Indian origin. Then we also then had Mr. Kurotwi eventually owning 46% of that company. But Mr. Kurotwi is the one who had initially come in and said he was bringing BSGR. But that transaction never materialized. But Mr. Kurotwi ended up being really the majority shareholder in Coal Mining. What did we do about it? The Zimbabwe Investment Centers here is the one which audits compliance with the investment proposals. So ZIA instituted an audit of Canada through Camelsa, now Grant Thornton Chartered Accountants. And their report is very clear that no investment was brought by Coal Mining. In fact, what you see when you go to Coal Mining are deposits which are being made locally rather than any money coming from outside the country as investment. So having studied that report from Grant Thornton, which had been instituted by Zimbabwe Investment Center, we then terminated the joint venture agreement with Coal Mining. It was clear no meaningful investment had been done, and in fact, if you look at Mr. Kurotwi, he never brought a single cent. Well, he's a Zimbabwean, but he holds a 46% in Coal Mining, which is supposed to be a South African company. So that's how we terminated that agreement. We also discovered, of course, I think it has been alluded to by Honorable Chidhakwa, that Coal Mining did not purchase any equipment. The equipment they had in the country was all...
I think we don't want to focus on Coal Mining. We want to talk about the joint venture partners who were there. Kusena was there. Because if you're going to talk about Coal Mining not compliant, you also mentioned that Kusena and Ganyama were also not compliant. So the next question is that, so what did you do? On Coal Mining we've heard, you terminated it. Let's now go to the others that you're working with in terms of complying with JV.
Yes, I'll go the Honorable Chair, but allow me to finish on Coal Mining, because you asked me to explain what did you do about it.
Mr. Mliswa, I think let's be very clear that we ask you questions, if we've gotten enough information, we move on. And I think we have enough information in Coal Mining, you now terminated it. Let's go to the next companies. Thank you.
The next one was Jinyame. Jinyame was a 50-50% joint venture partnership. Again, we have the same problem. A due diligence had been done on Jinyame, and there had been indications that they were going to bring $15 million through a bank transfer into the country. That money never came. Again, investigations showed that monies were being deposited locally into the bank accounts, showing that no investment was actually coming into the country. The other aspect is that Jinyame, they were local partners. They were local partners who ended up making an application to ZMDC that since this company, the foreign investor is not bringing any money, they would want themselves to borrow locally in order to make the joint venture work. And they borrowed some money on the local banks using their own personal properties as security. But there were then complications, shareholder disputes in Jinyame, with the result that it was not able to really move forward successfully. But I also, when you go to Ginyame, the other difficulty that we had was that we were instructed by government to give 20% in Ginyame to the Zimbabwe Republic Police. So you had 20%, ZMDC with 50%, then the ZRP coming in with 20%.
So just on a point of clarity, if you can just mention to us who actually gave that instruction, not just by government, which institution, who actually gave them that instruction to give 20% to the police? Who was the person?
The Minister of Mines, Honorable Mpofu.
Was it through a phone call?
So, because that's exactly what we need to clarify in terms of the joint venture partners, who they are. Government is 50%, who is Ginyame, who is this one, so that we're pretty clear on that. So Ginyame is 50%, 20% police, 20% this one, so that there's also clarity in terms of, so if next company can also be able to explain that, it will also assist us so that we have a clear understanding.
There was a question whether by telephone. No, it was in writing. That was an instruction in writing. First of all, it was 10%. Then, as we moved on, we were later advised to increase it to 20%. So even the due diligence which was done on Ginyame in Ghana, the team comprised officials from ZMDC, Kamelsa Chartered Accountants, and members of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. They went to Ghana to carry out due diligence on the capacity of the investor. So that again we terminated, when by the time I left, the termination had actually not occurred. But I had initiated the termination, my board had initiated the termination process when we saw that no meaningful foreign investment was coming in. So that's Ginyame. The other one is Kusena. Kusena, it was ZMDC, 50%. With the Central Intelligence Organization having the other 50%. But again, there were issues of capitalization, so production levels were very low.
We are continuing with all the you mentioned RERA.
Then we mentioned RERA. I think when I left RERA, it really, they were still, I don't think that they'd actually been licensed by the time I left. I'm not sure. I could be mistaken, but they were on the ground, doing some workings on the ground. I know that they had brought in some money into the country for purposes of the investment, but there were still issues being discussed with the authorities. Then the other one is, sorry?
I think they want to know exactly who the owners of RERA are.
It was ZMDC and a South African company called, I was told here, it was some foreign investor, either South African or Canadian. I'm not sure about those details now.
You know, I'm just thinking, as a human being says, there's a joint venture between government and the JV partner who's supposed to bring in resources. The JV partner is still Zimbabwe 50% and there's no resources. I'm just trying to understand what is the role of the JV partner. If you could also explain that to us, because seemingly the JV partners were Zimbabweans, but there's no resources. So what was the role of the JV partner? At the same time, they are mining. They're mining, some have licenses, some don't have.
I don't know which one had no license, Honorable Chair. They had licenses.
So we can continue.
For someone to mine in Marange, they have licenses. And the point I'm making is that if these licenses expired, I've said it's a moot point, but my own view, if you ask for my personal view, it was the responsibility of government to make sure that those licenses remained alive.
Okay, let's go to the other companies too, because what we want from you is, while we're talking about these companies, the next question is, how much money did they generate under MDC? In fact, to just put the question across to you, when you was MDC chairperson, dividends, how much did you give? That's really the question. We could go around the bush, we're about revenue. How much money was declared as dividends under your chairmanship?
Yes, I think the finance person of ZMDC is here. They will be able to give those figures, because those figures will be recorded.
That is what interests us. Financial person, take off, tell us the figure.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. In 2009, there was no dividend declared. In 2010, 51.8 million was declared. In 2011, 73.5 million was declared. In 2012, 39.2 million was declared. In 2013, 15 million was declared. In 2014,
So in 2013, how much was declared?
15 million.
15 million. So it went down from 73 million to 15 million.
It went down from 73, then to 39 million, and then to 15 million. And then in 2014, when the last dividend was made, it was now sitting at 9 million. By this, I'm talking of dividend declared to government of Zimbabwe, with the other half went to the other partners. So in total, 188 million was received to the Zimbabwean government, whilst another 188 million went to the joint venture partners. Thank you.
Okay, and then tax, how much tax did you pay?
The tax that was paid in 2010, it was, by this I mean the income tax or the corporate tax. In 2010, it was 34.8 million. In 2011, it was 11.4 million. 2012, it was 24 million. 2013, it was 17.8 million. And then in 2014, it was 6.9 million, to make a total of 94.8 million. Again, this was paid by Mbada, DMC, Jinan, and Marangi. Thank you.
Basically, the rest of the companies never paid tax. Never actually contributed.
The ones that contributed, like I've said, are Mbada, DMC, Jinan, and Marangi, and these figures are based on audited financial statements. Those are the entities that declared dividend, that paid tax.
What about the ones that did not?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have the financial statements for those entities. The ones I'm presenting are those entities that we have got the financial statements.
But surely speaking, if you're running a company, you've got 8 companies that you give something. You don't have 8 companies. When you're under 8 is how you cook. 4 pfumo dzikasaputsa mukaka hautauri kuti azaputsa mukaka. Isu tinoda kuziva dzasina kuputsa mukaka dzacho kuti ndedzipi. We've got to be very clear from a financial point of view. Your projections are clear. Chero mathematics doesn't have 20. Atatengesa 5 akaora. Iwe financial CA utaweza kututa zopana. Ayo akangachwa kuchokwadi. Makambani zangani ZMTC ameshana nao mangani. Ali mangani akaunza mali ndi akaunza mali ndi tochini. Yes, so Honorable Mr. Yes. And Honorable Mr. saying, and why do money you are very much always above and I can open the money?
Again, like I said, Mr. Chairman, we are not in possession of the financial statements which indicate those figures. Possibly the respective entities have got the financial statements or they've got the figures.
Sorry, I didn't get your response.
I'm saying we are not in possession of the financial statements for the entities that did not pay tax. Possibly the entities can present on their own, or they can indicate what they paid.
You see, this is where this is government in a JV. You are the one who finds the JV partner. Our role is to hold government accountable, not the JV partner. The team account track, our former town, we choose not to say anything. Mr. Chairman, from a board perspective, all these companies were supposed to generate an income. And those that don't generate an income, it is stated they don't generate an income. And the next question is that, so what did we do about those that don't generate an income? But still, they are holding on to licenses.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Rera Diamonds did not yet started mining, so they did not generate any mining. Kusena Diamonds were still carrying out exploratory work, so to speak. They'd really not started mining. The Jinyame, they had started mining and stockpiling, but they were issued that happened. I think that they will speak for themselves exactly what happened, but the reports we have is that on one day they were visited. He is here. I think if I do reported speech, Mr. Munyesa can speak for himself what happened at Jinyame, himself and the Zimbabwe Republic Police.
I think what we're trying to do is, everybody's here, we want to hear you as a government entity in mining on behalf of all the people in Zimbabwe. They all speak for themselves. And the issues that you are mentioning, let's be specific on the issues, because this is your accounting, and you cannot hide anything. You are under oath. What issues are these that you talk about? And let me remind you, under Parliament, you are protected by the privileges and immunities. So if anything happens to you or anybody threatens you after this, report to Parliament. So you are actually covered in all areas.
No, it's not that I'm afraid of anything. I'm simply saying the man is here, but I can explain, and then he can elaborate. What happened at Jinyame is that Mr. Munyesa here was the managing director, was called by the police, and the police kept a key to what is called the dot box, where you put the diamonds, one key. And Mr. Munyesa kept the other key, representing the investors. But he was called, and where he was forced to surrender.
Sorry, I think on a point of clarity before we move on, the police were keeping the key capacity.
Remember, they had a 20% shareholding.
20% shareholding. Okay.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
They had a 20% shareholding. So he was forced to surrender the other key.
Sorry, Chairman. He was it the whole clarion of police forcing him? Who?
He will talk to the names of the specific.
You explain. He's here. You explain.
Yes.
Who did that. But can you continue?
Yes. So he surrendered the other key, and what happened to those diamonds, we don't know.
And then Anjin?
Anjin, I believe they've been mentioned today.
You've gone through all the companies of the JVs.
DT Osgio, we...
You don't know the JV with them?
No, we
Okay,
don't.
that's
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
Members, any clarity on this one before we...
Maybe through Chair.
Yes, go on, Brian.
Maybe through Chair, just to keep the issues along the same line so that at least we can understand. Maybe if it is possible, maybe if the police can just explain why they kept what happened to the diamonds.
I think it's in line with that. I think certainly they're going to respond because they're part of this joint venture of the JVs. So we are moving ZMDC government. The JVs have been mentioned. I think we're done with government. I go to Mr. Mringani before I go to the JV partners so that they respond to all issues, and we also respond to the fact that you did not deliver, you did not declare dividends, and in all these licenses, you know it's clear, it's not clear for what you have to talk about. Yes.
Just a quick clarification. I think in his presentation he mentioned the increase from 10% initially allocated for ZRP, which was then increased by 100% to 20%. As a stake for ZRP. Was there any justification for that increase from 10% now to 20%? If these are the same people who brought nothing except their names to the joint venture.
I think on that one, it is the minister who gave instructions. It's not him, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a question for the minister who gave that instruction to respond to why from 10 it went to 20. He works under instructions and he says he had it in black and white and he had to implement. Yeah. Mr. Mringana, you took over. I don't know why I'm calling you Mringani when you Mrangari. I know you get offended, but I'm very sorry about that, Mr. I don't know why. You know, I'm very sorry about that. It is a very special name, and I'll say it properly now. Mrangari, Board Chairman, can you just take over from that? Equally, talk about the ZCDC company which you formed, as the Francis Gudyanga said.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I need to make some corrections here. First, the list that was read out by the finance manager on the dividends does not include Anjin. I think he stated it at the beginning, it's Kusen. Those figures relate to Mbada, DMC, and Jinan only, and not the others. I need to make that correction. Anyway,
we'll come back to that question.
Now, yeah.
The Anjin, what did they contribute? Financial director, chairperson of the board. We'll respond to that after his presentation. Thank you.
Right. The ZCDC. I regret to say that this corporation, initially when the issue of consolidation was brought up, the ZMDC met with all the different partners in the companies, in the diamond companies. And at the end of that, we made a report that went to the ministry, and we were not in favor of consolidation in terms, because of certain clauses that were in the contained in the various agreements. And our preference would have been that let the ZMDC, let those companies which were operating continue until they ran out of whatever diamonds they were mining out of the alluvium. And then, form a ZCDC. The structure was originally that ZMDC would be 50%, and these are the companies, if they were interested, they would then share the 50%. But our recommendation wasn't to do the consolidation the way it was done. However, due to the fact that this was a government decision coming from cabinet, when it was announced, every operations halted. Every operation halted in the area. However, the formation of the ZCDC happened at the ministry, and I only realized, I was told my name was put in as the other founding shareholder. I don't think I'd been consulted on that. So we did not have a board resolution on that formation of that company.
Okay, Professor Gudyanga, I hope you are following this, that the company was formed at ZCDC and there was never a board resolution. I just want you to take note. I don't need a response. I just want you to take note.
We were only told that the company had been formed, and that I was told that my name was on it. And so that situation is what it is. The shareholding by the ZMDC only happened much later, when the company was then, I think it was after queries that were raised by this committee, that the situation was corrected, and in the end, this company was placed under the ZMDC as our subsidiary. But to be honest, there's still a problem with the type of reporting. The reporting, the CEO goes straight to the ministry, and has rather been bypassing the ZMDC. With that, be that as it may, we now have copies of the Articles of Association, and we're looking at them to see what our role is going to be as the major shareholder. Obviously, anything that we do is by right from government. So while we have the authority over the responsibility over the ZCDC, I think the authority to do anything with the ZCDC still lies with government. So the position right now is as I have stated. Thank you.
Sorry, a very important announcement to all of you here. There will be a call for fire. You're okay. Don't panic. It's just a fire drill, which is there. So, thank you very much, just for you to know. Mr. Mungari, the aspect of the JVs, which ZMDC is involved with, in terms of subsidiary, in terms of the diamond sector, can we say that ZCDC is actually a baby of the ministry, not your baby?
Well, as I said at the end of my presentation, Chairman, Honorable Chairman, apparently it is now our adopted baby. It's now under us. We now hold we hold the shares on behalf of government as ZMDC, and our name is on it. So we're busy trying to sort out these minor issues of how we should communicate so that we can try and smoothen things and move forward. Thank you.
But you also did say that the CEO reports to the minister and doesn't report to the board. So how do you still say that it's your baby when the CEO doesn't report to you? Because there's got to be clarity. If it's a subsidiary of ZMDC, the CEO reports to the ZMDC board. The CEO cannot report to the minister. It is the ZMDC board that reports to the minister. Of course, the minister has a right to call wherever he wants, but in terms of corporate governance, in terms of the reporting of the operations of the company, it's as if it is the minister who has all the information more than the board.
Honorable Chair, if I may respond to your question, that's what I ended up saying, that those are some of the issues now we're sorting out in-house. And frankly, that's now going to be sorted out between ZMDC and the ministry and ZCDC, so we can make sure that they know who they must report to and under what circumstances. Thank you.
Okay. We'll now move to the joint venture partners. The Minister of State Security, we want to ask you, Comrade Mutasa, that when the Minister of State Security was there, the diamond concession given to the ministry, if so, production-wise, how was it run? So that we understand. You've also heard that it never did anything. It never had money, never contributed to anything. So what was the point of being in a concession where it's not helping you? So you need to take off
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you, Committee Inspector. We might as well go to Honorable Chombo as well, and Honorable Sekeramayi. And then and DG Bonyongwe. And then you also have to go to the Acting Commissioner General for this session. This is Jim to also take off.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
If MMCZ is near you, can you also
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Well, Mr. Munesuishe was mentioned. He's coming back. Mr. Ferreira again, joint venture. JV partners with ZNDC. If you could as well, so that we run this forward.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
So while you're Mr. Mliswa, we had asked of you to take off, you may take off the stand.
You hold your Bible using your left hand and you raise your right hand and you say, I swear the evidence that I'll give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
So can you be using this mic on both?
Is Anjin here? Is Bata here?
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
Where is Anjin here?
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
Is Mr. Munesuishe here? So is he here?
He's not here, Honorable Chair, but he has asked me to come in instead.
No, but we cannot operate like this. He never wants to come. He never wants to come. We have people who have more power than from a political point of view and are here. He's just a permanent secretary of the Ministry of Defense. The former Minister of Defense is here. He cannot blow out himself. He must be here. We have critical issues, the Secretary of Defense. We as Parliament have oversight over anyone, whether it's the military or not, that's there. Here we want to ask questions. And as a chief accounting officer, just like we did with others, he must be able to answer. No, I'm not going to take it from you today. You're going to bring him here. I'm not going to take any evidence from you because this is totally out of order. You cannot be wasting time. He's a permanent secretary for defense. Defense engine has been mentioned. It's a controversial issue. We're given an opportunity to clear these issues. The minister is not the chief accounting officer. We are doing this procedurally. And it's probably best you also leave now because there's no point of you being here. You must come proper with your whole team. Thank you. May you excuse us. In fact, we want you on Thursday when the Honorable Vice President will be on Friday, on the 13th. Player to which we have no choice but call the Vice President in charge of defense.
Thank you. You will see when he's back. You must tell us when he's back. We'll see him. It's okay. You see when he's back. It's okay.
I think, can you put the pen set for 1 minute, please? In fact, I must thank you, Mr. Machaya. He had a trip outside the country. He postponed his trip for this as a permanent secretary. And that's the sort of attitude what we need in this country.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Sorry, who do you represent?
Angel Investments.
Okay, thank you.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
I think we may proceed where it is late. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the share will probably
Thank you very much. That was very clear to us.
Said, help me God. I promise to say the truth. Thank you.
Okay, yes, at the back. Can you tell me?
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Then, Commander Tasa, may you proceed with your submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman, members of the committee, and all of us who are here. Mr. Chairman, I have very little evidence to give because we never discussed mining of diamonds in the department during the period that I was minister. Yes, we went to investigate undertakings that were not proper, but they were not undertakings by the ministry or the department, but it was undertakings that were done by other people and not by ourselves. I thank you very much.
I think this is emanating from the fact that there was a concession given to Kusena. In Kusena, you had informed and you had this ZMTC chairperson Mr. Masingwe, we're talking about the Central Intelligence Organization, which, if I'm not mistaken, is CIO, which is housed under the Ministry of State Security. So it is really from that where we are saying a Central Intelligence Organization. Can you tell us about your operations in terms of that?
Mr. Chairman, may I make it clear that it was not a matter that was brought before me as the minister. I'm not sure whether it was brought to other ministers. Perhaps those who are responsible who are here would clarify that. When I was minister, we never discussed about mining by the department. Yes, I heard about Kusena, but it was really not brought to my attention as a mining concern of the department during my period. I
Is it your evidence that there are certain operations that happen in the Central Intelligence Organization that the minister is not aware of, and is mining part of the Central Intelligence Organization's business?
Chairman, there are matters that are held by the accounting officer, and in my case, the accounting officer is here, Mr. Bonyongwe. Perhaps you could refer this question to him. But he never discussed Kusena with me during the time that I was minister.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable former Minister, Honorable Didymus Mutasa, may you put it on record before we go to the Honorable Bonyongwe. Can you put it on record that you were never at any given time consulted, that the CIO in department was involved in mining in Chiadwa? And if you can put it on record that you only heard of it maybe through reading from newspapers, but it was never at any given time that you had a meeting with him to discuss about this thing or to discuss as an organization. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I do. I accept your request that it be put on record. I never discussed this matter with Mr. Bonyongwe or any official of the department during the period that I was minister. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Masingwe, you talked about the Central Intelligence Organization, and this is a CIO of another country.
No, it's the CIO of this country, and the official, one of the directors is here, Mr. Mazingira. He was one of the directors of Kusena.
Okay, we'll move to the former Director General Bonyongwe in terms of mining. The Chief Accounting Officer, as Comrade Mutasa mentioned, Comrade Bonyongwe, are you aware of the Kusena concession that had been given to you so that you mine diamonds?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for giving me the floor. And I want to acknowledge receipt of summons which were served on me to come and appear here before the Committee on Mining and Energy, which you chair, Mr. Chairman. And the point which was raised in the summons was that we would be discussing the production levels. It does come and go into departments, and that is at various times. Minister Mutasa, I think, was the Minister of State for National Security from 2005 to 2008. That was the first time he was minister. And yes, it is correct, during that period, we never were into issues to do with mining as a department. Then after that, it was Minister Sekeramayi who was minister from 2009 to the year 2013. And then Minister Mutasa came back for a short stint from 2013 to 2014. So really, those were the periods which are under consideration. I mean specifically, really the period from about, I think 2009, 2010 to about 2011, 2012, and we were not with Minister Mutasa at that time. Allow me at this juncture, I think, to shed some light on the Kusena Diamonds mining project. So that I think once we remove that, questions can come, and if there are others who have to feed in more information, then that can be done. The context for investment or participation by a department like the President's Department into mining, it must be remembered, is one which really has to be understood in the context of the economic situation which we were going through as a country at that time, the period which I am making reference to. And there were problems to be funded by Treasury because of those economic difficulties which we were going through, and therefore we found it necessary to undertake certain operations which could raise funding to supplement the meager resources which were coming out of the Ministry of Finance. And of course, we are aware of Chidhakwa and the issue of diamonds, which was there, and therefore we thought it was necessary to undertake, in partnership with investors, operations there. And so it was that in the beginning we were able to find, as a department, someone who wanted to invest. And that was a company which was known as China International Fund. And so we partnered them, and they were able to bring in some equipment which was worth about, I think, up to about $10 million US. That equipment comprised of the plant water supply system, which included a 110 kVA generator, some 14,000 liter fuel tanks, 2 kilometers of pipeline, some office equipment, including some air-conditioned sleeping quarters and offices for the staff, a canteen, another generator, 75 kVA, and about, as I said, 2 kilometers of pipeline. Then we also had some plant, which was a grizzler. That's a plant for feeding stock into the density medium separator, a DMS. This particular DMS was about 10 tons per hour in terms of its capacity. That is fairly small, and in fact it is deployed when you are doing some exploration work. When you now look at the real operations themselves, you are looking at very big machines going to about 100 tons per hour. And for, I think, the big boys, Yombadas and so on, they ended up with DMSs of that size, and in some cases perhaps not one, but quite a number of them. I am mentioning this so that we understand the scope and the scale of what the department was involved in. It was a very small plant, 10 tons per hour. And a number of other items which were brought in, earth-moving equipment, which was excavators, front-end loaders, dump trucks, and various such equipment. So that's the equipment which went in, but not exceeding about $10 million US. That particular investor, China International Fund, went in to do exploration, as I have indicated. The plant, the DMS, and most of the equipment were designed really for alluvial diamond mining. The hope was that there would be alluvials which are easier to scoop up and then also to process, and not the conglomerates which was mentioned by Minister Chidhakwa, which needs quite some huge investments for you to be able to go into the earth and then extract the rock there, smash it and get the diamond out. So there it was, the investor went in, tried to find alluvials at claims which are claims D and H in Chiazwa, which when you compare with the other claims which are there, these were more on the periphery and they were not really that rich. And in fact, we found that there were no alluvial diamonds on those claims. And therefore the investor, after doing some work, decided that it was not a worthwhile investment and he decided to leave. That particular investor wanted to take this equipment out of the country. At the time, we then said as a department that he could not do so because what we had been able to do was to clear that equipment. And therefore the customs clearance which we did was our own contribution into the equipment, and so we refused that he takes the equipment out of the country. And so faced with a scenario where he could not take that equipment out, he ended up donating that equipment to the department. So there it is, we ended up with about $10 million worth of equipment at the camp which had been set up for diamond mining. We as a department were not experts in mining. If anything, perhaps we could do some security. And we then needed someone to partner with in mining. This is how we then came up with ZMDC. We then went into a joint venture with the ZMDC on a 50-50% basis and made it very clear that we were not miners. They were the experts in mining. Could they do the mining? And we found ourselves with this equipment. Take it over. If there are any additional pieces you want, then secure that, but you mine. We provide security. And then we will be very happy to get the proceeds of that mining enterprise. So that is what basically happened. And this was during the period from 2011 when Minister Sekeramayi was our minister. There was created a board of directors which was set up. We looked at all the structures, issues of corporate governance and so on were very important. And so structures were set up. The person who became the chairman of the board was the late Jonathan Kazura, who was appointed to that position by the ZMDC because they were the lead partner here, being the experts in mining. The general manager also was from ZMDC, as were the finance executive and the plant manager. And basically, according to my story, really the ZMDC took over and they ran the mine. We provided some security, essentially. Now, what were the production statistics as was requested in the summons? The gem quality diamonds which were realized were some 833 carats. Then near gem or semi-gem was only about 784.45 carats. Then industrials came to some, let's see, 11,091.9 carats. The grand total coming to 13,989.95 carats. That is what was produced by the ZMDC from what we understand. The entire enterprise, because there were some bits of equipment which were then procured by the ZMDC. We understand that the mine, when set up, was worth more than the $10 million which I have made a reference to. But anyway, for present purposes, those cars were sold, we understand, by the ZMDC. The amount of money, there was a reserve price of about $650,597.27, but the total amount which was realized was $1,012,906.08, which was realized. And that really was the money which was realized by the joint venture. The money never came to the department. The money, as far as we understand, is with the ZMDC. We never got anything out of it. And as we moved on, then came the era of consolidation, which was now towards the end of the year 2013. And basically the players now in the Ministry of Mines were Minister Walter Chidhakwa, then we had Secretary Gudyanga and Mr. Murangari, chair of the ZMDC. Those became the players. And the point which we were raising as a department was that with consolidation coming online, maybe it was time for us as a department to exit diamond mining. It had not benefited us anything really, but what we wanted from them and what I hope that the department will be able to get from the Consolidated Diamond Company would be perhaps something from the equipment which we contributed to that endeavor. We gave that equipment, ZMDC, now it's part of the equipment of the Consolidated Diamond Mine. Some evaluations would need to be done, and at one time I think the equipment was now, after depreciation and so on, estimated to be worth about $6 million. And I would be very happy if the ministry and the Consolidated Company could perhaps give something to the President's Department for that effort which it made to secure some investment into diamond mining from outside, and we ended up with that equipment. And the diamonds which were realized, they have the diamonds anyway. We never got the diamonds, and that's the end of the story. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
My only point of clarity or question is with the entire intelligence that you have for the country, how do you not dictate the diamonds where they reach?
Oh. Well, I've said, I think that we are not experts in diamonds and in mining in general. That's the point I make. We applied for a concession. Yes, we knew that they were richer concessions and so on, but it was not for us to go and say, really, the decision by the Minister of Mines to allocate us a certain concession was wrong. We were allocated a concession, we accepted it and proceeded, as I have explained. If we had perhaps been given a richer concession, it might have been a different story. Something could have been realized. And I say this, I think, on the back of the structures which we set up and so on, and the way in which we tried to execute matters in the department in a very transparent and efficient manner. And in this case, anyway, I don't regret it, because anyway, we were able to realize something for our country. That amount of equipment which we ended up with, and the diamonds the ZMDC have got. So we did something, we contributed something as the President's Department under my leadership. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. What we are looking for as a committee ultimately is $15 billion worth of revenue, which was realized from diamonds. and by extension, the money that was realized ultimately from all Diamond's sales. Do you stand by your point that part of that money would be resident with at the ZMDC, as you allude to? Because this is part of the revenue that was realized from the diamonds. Would you stick to your point that part of that $15 billion that you excavated and realized is with ZMDC as we speak?
Mr. Chairman, my answer to that is an emphatic yes. I stand by my assertion. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Major.
Mazvita pavakanga vashaya madiamonds paclaim yatakapuwa vakatiwo vanga vakuda kutora equipment yavo vabude vaende vachiti vane maoperations avaigona kuita kune dzimwe nyika muAfrica. Saka it was equipment yakanaka yanga iri nyowani and iri air portable. I think ndo inzwi ravakashandisa isi tikati tinoruza panapa. Ndokubva tati pamakauya nayo makati tiitei tikaiclear. Saka icontribution yedu yatakaita yedu tese, hamuchagona kuitora kubuda nayo kubva muZimbabwe. Saka hazvichaita tikaguma tahwina argument yedu vakati alright hazvichinei chitorai, ndokubva tapuwa. Mazvita
From a DG, I think the question is pertinent. You said that the diamond industry, there are allegations of the security being heavy-handed. And then I will actually say that there's a joint venture with them, they did not get what they were wanting, and they had the right to live with their equipment. But I think in a way, she's basically saying you now used that state security status to say you can't go, because I think in a simple business transaction, and then I'm saying this for any investor who must come to this country, that even if you're a joint venture partner with state security, defense or police, the aspect of governance must still apply. So did you have an agreement? Because now I lead to the next question. What agreement did you have with them?
Okay. Vakatipa and vakatipa vachifara vaonerada kuita but nyaya yakadai upenyu kahwu munotaurirana, munhu anotaurawo zvaari kufunga iwo mupindurawo. Ndichiri kutorememba ndiri kumuona muridzi wacho achisekerera achichifa. Handifungi kuti pane nyaya yakashata yakaitika ipapo, handifungi. Rest assured, no, it was fine. And sure, the important thing is when you clear equipment, munopeya duty kuzimura or whatever, munoita contribution, moti maane joint venture, equipment yayedu tesi. Then vamostanga kuita try to disentangle that, oti ndakutora ichi ndakudai ndakutika but chachiko ichi. Musadaro. Vakatinzwisisa. Kugonawo kutaura zvakada kwatakaita. Mazvitaini.
I think it requires more. I think we can take this session seriously to help. I asked of an agreement. An agreement between you and the partner. And I'll ask the question, who is the partner?
Hello. Right. I thought, Mr. Chairman, that I had actually answered you. No, the issue here was whether I should go in the Shona way to answer also, because it became one question. it was an agreement that they give us, they donate, and it was a donation. And a donation in law is an agreement. There is an offer and you accept. Yes.
We don't make progress. Can you finish this committee the agreement? I think that one.
Not a written agreement, a verbal agreement.
Okay, can we know the partner? Could we also want to invite them?
China International Fund. I gave that name.
Okay, so if you give us the
I did.
the partners, because it would be good for us to hear the other side of the story. Thank you. I think we are done with that. Honorable Matamana.
Thank you, Chair. Nataka sana mpango ndi tauro panye tauro na DG abonyo eti ndakachifunga kuti zvakanyanya oma nekuti vabvunzwa mubvunzo wakaoma. Takachifunga kuti muchasinyadzisa but materialist magona. I just want to say, because Mwana Rumuno, Chairman, can tichiti isusu turuguti.
No order. Can I guide you pertaining to how this committee is run? We never say that. We will talk about that on our own in terms of deliberation. Can you withdraw that statement?
Oh, I withdraw. I withdraw some. Kuti asina chida ndingotsinira andika mubvunzo wangu ndokuti muno mashoko angu ndiye kuti mambotaura chairman vataura muno vakati hatina kuuya kuzoita inonzi witch hunting handizvo. Saka kana munhu agona ka sometimes we should not be raped kuti tatadza kutaura kuti munhu agona handika ndida kuti nditi
I think we're in a serious session, and if you continue, I have no choice but to reject you. What is your point of clarity? And it seems you don't have it. The time has been taken away from you. You cannot speak anymore. Thank you. You must proceed. Honorable Nenga, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I just want to ask the former DG, considering what Honorable former Minister Mutasa just said that he was never consulted, and he came back to the ministry, I think from 2011 to 2013, I can't remember. Already there were some operations which the department was doing. Can the former DG explain to us why they didn't inform the then Minister, Honorable Mutasa, considering that they had already started the operations in as far as the diamonds were concerned? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that question. When Mutasa came back, that was 2013 to 2014. Really, that was the period when the ZMDC now were in charge of the mining operations, as I indicated. Perhaps what we should have done was before this to try and refresh each other's minds on perhaps the briefings which were given or were not given. I would want to believe that when one takes into account the elaborate system of briefings which exist in the department, that we would have at some point at least mentioned that there was some claim in Chiazwa to which we were party with the ZMDC, and there should be some operations which are taking place. But then anyway, Mutasa is my senior and I don't want to argue on this. That's basically what I will say. Thank you.
I think, DG, can we conform to the rules of this? Parliament doesn't really deal with seniors. I think that's you do outside. We talk about corporate governance, and what we're trying to get to is the Minister of State Security. You're the Director General. Who reports to who? And I think we must be very clear. We're talking about corporate governance issues, and you can go left, right, and center. What I need to understand, how can, his point is very clear. You have the Minister of State Security. And he equally must know what is going on in the organization. So if there were diamonds being married to you making money, he was never going to know. So in terms of that structure, how come you spoke also of Minister Sekeramayi, then was Minister of State Security, the Office of the Director General, in terms of this mining concession, were you supposed to report elsewhere or to the minister? We must be very clear. Yes, we go left, right, and center. I was a simple person from an oversight point of view, using the government institutions which are there. There is a minister, there is a permanent secretary. In terms of state security, there's a Minister of State Security, there's a Director General. So in terms of accounting, the committee wants to understand who were you reporting to. We also are aware that the Director General reports directly to the President. So there's the Commissioner General. We're also aware of that. But in terms of the operations of the ministry, because we have a situation where people with impunity have gone on to make decisions to the detriment of this country. So we've got to hold you accountable as Director General. Why did the ministers not know of this? Because there's a handover, takeover. In any structure, these are government institutions which have got handover, takeover. When a new minister is coming, he's briefed on the operations. What you do? Whoever comes in, that is the reason why institutionalism is what we're emphasizing on, not personalities. So the moment you say he's a senior, that's personal. I don't take that. I want him to be addressed as a former minister of state security, you as DG. So, nyaya dzekuti senior ayo, ini ndikuda kuti mupindure vari minister we state security, ini muri director general yawo, kune mai license yamakapiwa. CCIO, tichitenderana kuti wongo economy yanga isina kumera mushe makapiwa munotenderwa hapana chinora. Tasaka generator chi. Vakuru pabas minister vaiziva here zvese. That is his question, which must be answered.
Mr. Chairman, I answered that question. Let me answer it in very clear terms. The minister was briefed. And if you noticed the carefulness with which I considered that question, I didn't just answer it myself only. I consulted the director to my right. Because briefings which are given, even when somebody arrives and so on and so forth. So the minister was briefed.
So you realize that in your great presentation you gave, you are prevaricating.
No, I am not prevaricating on anything.
Maybe I'll explain to you what prevaricating means in terms of depending on the rules. Since you're a lawyer, you can also understand. So that everybody understands that you cannot prevaricate when you're before us. One statement remains that.
Yes.
So you see, now we have a situation where the minister clearly under oath says, he never knew about this, he was not briefed. But then came to you again, and then you said, yes, you can confirm that the minister was not briefed because there were many ministers changing. You mentioned Minister Mutasa coming in for a certain stint, then Minister Sekeramayi came in, and so forth. I pay attention to issues that you raise, and I'm just trying to go back to the narration of what you presented before us. Okay. That ministers come and go, yes, we agree, and Minister Mutasa says, I was not briefed about it. And you agreed on that, that yes, clearly that was not done. Then you now say the minister was briefed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I think there is the issue of the time frames. That is what I was explaining. The time frames which were, yes.
I think I've gotten enough from you. Let me go to Mr. Mutasa. Mr. Mutasa, the former minister, he did say he briefed you.
Sorry, I didn't follow your last part of the question.
The DG is stating that he did review on the going on of the concession that CIO had, contrary to you saying that you will not know about that.
Mr. Chairman, I think if you recall, the DG said the question of diamond mining came in 2011, and I was not the minister at that time. And when I went back into the ministry in 2013, it was only for a short time, and I believe that the briefings might have been done to the minister who was in office then, and perhaps that is the matter that you need to clear. But definitely I want to repeat for the third time that I didn't know anything about us as the President's Department mining any diamonds. And as a matter of fact, it was a matter that I used to trouble the President about, because there were others who were being given concession, and I was wondering why we didn't get any. And the President could have told me too that, by the way, you got it, but he didn't.
The only thing I want to confirm with the briefings that you get of this nature, are they also in black and white? Is there a report which is submitted to you as Minister of State Security on the operations of the Director General in terms of whatever they do?
Mr. Chairman, not during my tenure of office, as stated. There were no reports in black and white, except of incidents that may be under investigation. Those were you can find reports on that. But on this briefing, I do not think there was any. I think
we'll make progress. We have heard. We'll make progress on that. I think Honorable Nangan, I think a number of issues are coming up. We need to deliberate this. Honorable Temba, what clarity do you need? You know, when you're given an opportunity to speak as chair, I think let's focus to issues.
Thank you, Chair. Matabas. Patao pamba chitauro. Ambotaura former Minister Mutasa. Vati vandanzwa kuti vantivo vakangozvinzwa but havana kugara pasi vachitaura nezvemadiamonds. Saka mubvunzo wangu uri pavana director kuti izvo ndepamuri kuti here makavabriefa sezvo vazotaura kuti vakangonzwa nokuti vakauya kwenguva diki diki.
I think Honorable Mutasa, as chair, former Minister Mutasa did not say that. I rule that one out. Let's proceed. Let's go to the minister. You're a joint venture partner with the ZMDC. There is the issue of sorry, sir, I certainly had we have done state security. We are going to the police now. And then we will do defense because others are not here who thought should be here. But we will come to you, Dr Sekeramayi. You did listen to the presentation by the former chairman in terms of your joint venture partnering you with the manager. Can you please respond to the aspect of the diamond production that you had been given to as a concession?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the issue of Ginyame is a bit peculiar in that, yes, there was a local partnership in Ghanaians, Ghanaians who had the undertaking to fund the operations from onset. So, and we went into a JV with ZMDC, just giving a brief narrative of the history. In the process, I would agree with Mr. Masimirembwa that in the process, we were then told, not in writing though, that the police are being given a shareholding, a free carry shareholding, which was initially at 5%, not the 10%. It moved from 5% to 10% and then 20% in a space of a week. And these were all verbal communications. At one time, I know that together with the Ghanaians, we had now declined that we were not happy to proceed. However, after meeting the then minister,
communications to you coming from who?
Where the chairman, as he narrated, as he was, so the chairman then conveyed the information to us. At one time, we actually were not happy to proceed, as stated. However, after meeting with the then minister Mpofu, an agreement was that, look, they will continue. And just also the JV agreement had a condition precedent that we bring in 5 million before we even start. And that condition precedent was met. But however, over the course of the agreements, we finished the committee with the various agreements. Over the course of mining, an investment of 110 million was supposed to be done. So that we began mining, and from the onset, I think for us it was unfortunate. We started with an albatross around our neck. We had the police, we had high expectations, and not only high expectations, but we felt the way they pushed, they felt the concession was theirs. So we are not so sure what communication was done to them, because their behavior was that this concession was theirs. Block G, we were awarded the conclusion of our special grant was only done beginning of 2012. And immediately what we started doing was secure the concession. This was just basically a bush. Unlike other concessions, for those that are familiar with Chidhakwa, Mbada was already active before Mbada was awarded. Many other concessions, people had a fair understanding that they were definitely guaranteed alluvial diamonds on those particular concessions. But as for Block G, which is at the tail end of Chidhakwa, right at the confluence of Sabi and Odze River, it was just a bush. And we had to create road networks. And then after that, it was not going to make sense for us to immediately start putting in money before we verify whether they were indeed diamonds, as you heard from the former DG, that they only discovered later that they were not alluvial diamonds of any substance after an investment was already done. For us, we then decided to do exploration. And we actually contracted SRK International to do the exploration for us, a process that took about 6 months. Once that was concluded around July, August 2012, we then decided to order our own DMS. But SRK had already told us that it was not total, they had not totally completed. All they were giving indications was definitely their diamond-bearing grains on our concession. And we ordered a DMS, a smaller one initially, a 20-ton. However, at that stage also, our Ghanaian partners were struggling with bringing in capital. And they had other issues, I think, which were quite documented in terms of illegal. Perhaps some of them were involved in illegal gold dealings, but that's another story. At the end of the day, we managed to bring in, we raised money locally. They had already contributed some money from Ghana. But when they could no more do that, we raised money as part of the investors, as the locals. We borrowed money from the banks that enabled us to bring in the 20-ton DMS, which was top end because it had everything. The sort house, grizzly machine, it had everything adjoined to it. We also put in place water tanks and various other ancillary equipment on site. However, at that same time, you find that the police, I'll refer to the police because our understanding it was the police, although their presentation in terms of Sierra 14s, they produced to us as investment vehicles, they had no police officer on them, but that's for them to answer. They then opted that they didn't want the Ghanaians anymore. And I remember a particular day on a Saturday in October, I documented very well because I received various phone calls with one of the advisors to the then Commissioner General telling me that I should dismiss the Ghanaians, of which I refused.
I think it's important to tell us who the advisors.
It was Farai Mtamangira.
Members, if you are giving us slain the person.
It was Paraim Tamangira who then told me that, look, we needed to get rid of the Ghanaians, of which I flatly refused because they had made their own contribution. We're a partnership. They had their own investor. That's what they had actually indicated. The investor was a company called Solel, based in Singapore. We understand they actually did the due diligence. Under what auspices, again, they'll be able to answer. We fought that viciously because already we were disadvantaged. We started off with a 20%, unlike other investors, of free carry, and immediately employed in excess of 140 personnel in terms of security, of which half of that was already, were people who were already current serving police officers whom we were paying or salaries which were already dictated. So for us already there was an element that were being set up to fail. You find the frustrations why Mr. Masimbo at MDC sometimes then wrote us letters saying that we're not happy with your progress. But the hemorrhage in terms of financial for a company that has not started operation was severe. Anybody who has gone into project will find out that there's no need to have severe overheads before you actually start producing. However, we actually strove to finish off the project. Beginning of 2013, our DMS was delivered in February. And the people whom we bought it from South Africa managed to assemble it on site, and production started in March, just before Easter in 2013. And at that point, the squab was then, the shareholder issues rose again through the ZRP, who then spoke to the Ghanaians. The Ghanaians had been, part of them had been already expelled from the country because of illegal gold dealings. But they turned around the situation and they said, look, the locals want to dismiss you, so get rid of the locals. And sadly, the Ghanaians obliged initially. But they didn't have money because the money we were now using was local money raised by us. And when the banks realized this is what had happened, they stopped financing Ginyame. And they were stuck, the police and the Ghanaians, with no money. And the Ghanaians were dismissed. Immediately they were dismissed, I think around June, July of 2013, they were dismissed. But prior to that, in April, going to the matter that Mr. Masimbo raised, a group of police officers, about 8 or 7 of them, came to our offices. At that point, I'd gone to pick up my child from school, and they demanded to see me. The guys at the office tried to tell them that, look, I wasn't in the office, but they said they wanted to speak to me. So eventually they spoke to me, and I told them I was at my child's school, of which they told me to wait there. They waited there. There were 3 cars, 2 police officers armed. I think I've got their names. There was a chief, Superintendent Dube, and the detective inspector Makavi. 2 of them armed got into my car, and their main mandate was they've been told that they must retrieve the dot box keys from me. Initially, I was very vicious, and I said, no, I would not hand them over. There was no need for me to do that. This is a plant that we had purchased using funds raised by us. Why would I hand over? Mining was now happening. I was going to be accountable. If they were going to take over the keys, let there be a proper handover, takeover. But they wouldn't listen to that. So they said they would drive with me, drop off my kid at home, and it was a convoy, the 3 cars and my car. We dropped off my child at home. They were together with me, and then we went to the CVR building in town. I was detained there for a couple of hours, of which they kept on asking for the keys. I was refusing with the keys until eventually I was taken into a dark room and forced to hand over the keys. At that point, I had to hand over. There was no legal representation. Nobody was allowed to see me. I had to hand over the keys, and that was it. As to what then transpired to the stones that we had mined, I have no idea. But what we did immediately the following day, we wrote a letter, copied to the Commissioner General Police, whose name was being used as that he's the one who has ordered that particular retrieval of the dot box keys. But we copied as well, the President's office. I think Mr. Bonyongwe was then the former DG. You might recall, we wrote a letter to him. We wrote a letter to the then Minister Obert Mpofu. We wrote a letter to various people, just alerting them that, look, we have no control whatsoever anymore as to what is happening on concession G, Block G, which is Ginyame. And from there, absolutely with no control. The Ghanaians also left. So the police were there alone from about May, June 2013 right up to a period when creditors whom we were paying before then made representations and the company was put under judicial management, I think around towards the end of 2014. By then, the new minister Chidhakwa had come in and he was already speaking about consolidation. So then at that point, the police were then abruptly stopped from whatever they were doing. They continue mining, we don't know what happened and what then transpired with the stones. So basically, in terms of compliance, I would say Ginyame legally, we complied in terms of capital injection. Like I mentioned before, we were at our formative stage when consolidation came into place. There was no way we were expected to operate at the same level with Anjin, DMC or Mbada. We had just started and still really discovering what was on site. Plans were very clear. I think we have evidence that we had already ordered a 50-ton DMS. So our growth was quite progressive, that we were going to be able to get to a satisfactory level of production. But for us, we would not have achieved it because of the shareholder issues that we then encountered. I think in summary, Mr. Chairman, that's the story on Ginyame. I'll finish you with supporting documents. I'll finish the committee with supporting documents of what was done, what was on the ground in terms of Ginyame, what development we did on the ground. We built houses. There was road networks. Everything was there. There was a pipeline. We can finish that information. And up to that, we never realized a single cent from our investment up to now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Honorable Sekeramayi, just one question. When you Minister of State Security, did you get any briefing of the diamond concession that is being mentioned? Did you know about it?
Honorable Chairman, honorable members of this committee,
Thank you.
honorable Chairman, honorable members of this committee, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I got a briefing from the DG about going forward.
Okay, thank you. We shall break for lunch after such a short answer. We'll break at 15:15. We need to. We are really not anything. People might think Parliament makes you stay. You also have the rights to eat. So this is lunchtime. Let's get back at 15:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you.